Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at the Master's Seminar at South Florida Bible College and Theological Seminary. Now, this isn't for the Master Divinity. That's another topic, although I will address a few points along those lines. The big thing about the Master's Project is the Thesis Project. Your thesis is the culmination of the course of studies in the program, and the idea is that it would take in all the classes and integrate that entire field of study to bring together a resulting paper. Now, the biggest thing that you face, maybe the hardest thing, is just choosing a thesis topic. Ask a question, what are you passionate about? Because if you don't love this topic, by the end of the semester, you're actually going to hate it. It ought to be your hot spot. You answer a question or solve a problem. You're not trying to prove something. In fact, you're going to avoid the word prove. So don't use those sorts of words. You may be giving evidence towards something, but you're going to seek to answer a question, take the reader toward that answer. Now, to choose the topic, it will be publishable. In fact, hopefully it will be published, but not necessarily marketable. MDiv students are going to have their thesis published as a thesis. It will be published in hardback form. But this, we're looking in this presentation for the Master of Arts students, and they will have the possibility of having their papers published. In fact, our plan is to have all those papers published in the South Florida Bible College and Theological Seminary Journal. That journal has been running now for a number of years, and it contains the papers of our both our master students and sometimes even our graduating underclass students. Now, the possible topical areas, and that doesn't mean you can choose a specific exegetical problem. In fact, that's probably the easiest, where you choose one verse or maybe a short passage, 1 or 2 or 3 verses. The smaller, the better. It can be in the area of evangelism or of apologetics or of church growth or of preaching, but your thesis will not be just about evangelism or just about apologetics or just about church growth, just about preaching. Those areas are far too broad, and so you're going to narrow your focus. You're going to hear me say that again and again. Might be in the area of counseling, but again, a narrowed focus. It won't be just a paper on counseling. It will be a thesis on one particular aspect about counseling. Again, it might be in one particular area of spiritual formation. Now, the assigned steps, first of all, you're going to submit a written research hypothesis / proposal. It can be either one. And you're telling the reader what it is you're going to write about. So you're going to submit that thesis. First of all, let's back up a bit. You submit your thesis title and your abstract for approval. And so the title, that's going to sort of tell you, and don't go for a flashy title, very simple title that tells you what the thesis is going to be about. It can be a long title, but don't go for stylistic where you have to sort of guess what that title means. Next, you're going to submit a detailed outline of the thesis. This is really for your benefit. First of all, it's to make sure there shouldn't be 21 points on your outline. It really should be much less than that, maybe 5, at the most, maybe 6 points, major points. Now there'll eventually be a lot of subpoints, but when you first submit your outline, submit it just with the major points, and then you fill in those subpoints. And let me just say, the more detailed your outline is, where it's got subpoints and the subpoints of the subpoints and the subpoints of the subpoints of the subpoints, the more detailed your outline is, the easier it will be for you to write your paper. It's almost like having a full skeleton, and then all you have to do is put the flesh on. So a detailed outline of your thesis. Next, you'll submit a working bibliography. I'm not that interested in that, but you should be developing a working bibliography. How can you tell a book is scholastically advanced enough to be in your thesis? Well, look at the back of the book. Does it have a reference page bibliography of its own? That's just a quick hint on if that book will have sufficient academic rigor. Next, submit a single full chapter. Now, it might be your introductory chapter, or maybe some people like to write the introduction later on, but submit some work so that we can see if you're going at the right pace, and maybe we can make a very early mid-course correction if there's a problem. And then after that, we're just going to say, write the rest of it. And so you'll submit your final thesis for approval, and then hopefully you're going to be done. Now, that proposal outline, you present the problem and the specific ways in which you propose to present it. This proposal is going to become Chapter 1. That's sort of your introduction. Here's what you're going to do, and you're going to tell your reader what it is you plan to accomplish in your work. Your proposal is a little like having a sermon series plan, where you're going to preach, for example, through on a certain topic, but the very first sermon tells you what you're going to do throughout all the other sermons. And your proposal outline is a little bit like that. But remember, you're not preaching a sermon. Don't use your sermon voice. Use your academic voice instead. In the proposal outline, you're not married to the outline of the proposal, so that if you submit it and then afterwards you change it, that's okay. As you work through it, you might see that there's a need to have certain changes in the outline, but you don't want to change it to where you have a whole bunch of points, not major points. Your major point should be fairly short, fairly limited. Maybe, like I said, maybe 5, maybe 6. Not more than that. More than that, and your work is getting too long. But it may have plenty of minor points and subpoints and subpoints of the subpoints and so on. That's okay. The title and the problem, 15-word maximum for the title. That's a very long title. Probably won't be nearly that long. Probably considerably shorter. So you don't have to go for a very long title. State the problem in 2 to 5 pages. That's double-spaced, of course. Make it so that the reader is crying out for a solution. In other words, sell me on the fact that I want to read this paper. Show me why it's important. Show me what the problem is that you're going to be, for which you're going to be seeking a solution. This is a problem worthy of your study and time because it's a problem that afflicts the church or scholarship, or in other words, it's a problem worth studying. Give background information and relevant data in your title and problem. You can use secondary support and references. You can note that other people have seen this, that it's a problem. And you can use real-life illustrations. In other words, you can say, I've observed this, and it's okay at this stage to use the first person singular. You're not going to do that throughout your whole thesis. You're going to usually avoid it. You maybe even avoid it here. That's okay. But if need be, if there is something that's happened in your life where you've seen this as a problem, it's okay to use the first person singular to say I've seen this. But don't overdo that. The big thing is you're awakening the reader to the problem. And then you're asking the question, have other people seen the problem? Try to utilize at least one substantiating, maybe several substantiating references to other published authors who've seen this problem. But you want to tone down your language. You're going to use the British model of understatement. Again, not your preaching voice. The problem statement must not contain the proposed solution. And so you're not going to tell them what the answer is. You're going to build up suspense along the way, and then guide them to the answer. The problem statement is not meant to answer the problem, but she should leave the reader hanging. I've already said this before in so many words, but just restating it. Avoid that oratory style. Remember, this isn't you're not using a preaching voice. You're not overstating things. You're not saying this is the most important problem in the world. That could be argued. You can say it's a significant problem. Don't tell me, oh, praise the Lord. Make me praise the Lord by reading your paper. But don't tell me to do that. That's might do that. That might work in the pulpit. It's not going to work on this sort of paper. So I already noted, follow the British model of understatement. This isn't a matter of being unique or having complete original thoughts. There's been books written on almost every topic under the sun. You're going to build and synthesize upon what others have done before you, but you're not going to plagiarize. Anytime you cite somebody else, you're going to give quotations. And of course, your paper is going to be a lot more than just a bunch of quotations strung together. It's going to be mostly yours, but you've built upon what other people have studied and other people have written, and you're building your own unique work based upon that. The thesis question, simple is good. What's the essence of the problem? What does this verse mean? And then you'll begin to analyze that. Or how do I do apologetics in this particular situation on this particular topic? You remember you want to use the laser beam rather than the shotgun. Very narrow focus of your problem. Do not assume the answer in the question. We've already noted that. The thesis is going to be typed in double-spaced using 12-point Time New Roman font. That's the standard. That's sort of the universal standard. You can use single spacing when you're using charts, and in the case of block quotations, but everywhere else is double-spaced. Now, this is primarily I'm talking to my Master of Arts students. For the MDiv students, the final copy of the thesis is going to be printed on cotton paper. 2 copies are going to be turned in, plus an electronic copy. For the MA students, they don't have to turn in a paper copy at all. The MA students, Master of Arts students, will submit your paper electronically as a Word document in Populi. And you say, well, I don't like to use Word. I'm sorry. It's sort of I hate to say it's the standard, because I don't actually enjoy using Word all the time. I tend to gravitate towards some other. But for this, we need it in Word because we will be changing that font size and compressing it as it goes into the South Florida Bible College and Theological Seminary Journal. So page count for Master of Divinity, that's the 50-page thesis. For the Master of Arts, it's 30 pages minimum. There will be no spelling or grammatical errors permitted in the thesis. When we see one, it's rejected. So it's up to you to make sure this is picture perfect. Sources should be of a scholarly nature and can include books, journal articles, and internet sources, but they should all be of a scholarly nature. The following styles will be followed by the MDiv students. All students except those in the behavioral sciences are using Turabian. All students in the behavioral counseling sciences, that's like Christian counseling, clinical counseling, they use APA. But for the MA students, they have some other options. First of all, there's MLA with in-text citations. Let's look at one example of an in-text citation. This is a very easy shorthand. This is for those who some people have problems with Word and doing the footnoting. And remember, if you do the footnoting, you have to let Word do it. You can't put it in manually. But here's another option if that's been giving you all sorts of problems. And this is only an option for the Master of Arts program. In fact, it's only an option for the Master of Arts program as long as I'm overseeing it, Dr. John Stevenson. If that's turned over to somebody else in the future, this will change. But for the time being, notice part of the dissertation, or part of the thesis is saying in a series of case studies, Chen and Koo found, and these are 2 authors that are mentioned in the writing. And now we have it in quotes. Here's the quote. The majority of students were willing to take risks in committing the offenses, even though most of them realized that plagiarizing was not a proper behavior. This is obviously talking about online plagiarism. And then the date of publication is given along with the page number, and then is the period at the end of the sentence. And then down in the reference page, among all of the other references, notice I've got the authors and the title of the article and the publication in which it was found, and then the other publication data along with the date. If they had written 2 different articles, both published in 2008, I would go 2008 A, B, C, and so on. But that doesn't happen very often. And so this is very easy. It's a much easier form, and we allow this because it's also easier when it goes into the journal form. So for that reason we allow it, and I don't want to say encourage it, but I personally actually do. So if that's easier for you, then by all means use that shortcut. So thesis guidelines. An electronic version of the Master of Arts thesis is going to be permitted, and the purpose of that, the reason I want it electronically, is because that work can be now published, taken, adapted, and published in the South Florida Bible College and Theological Seminary Journal, which comes out every May. Right after in fact, usually at graduation, it's coming out, and usually available right at graduation. Now the MDiv students, and if you're an MDiv student, you ought to be getting most of your information somewhere else. But the MDiv students are going to be also submitting an electronic version of just their title page and abstract, because the abstracts for the MDiv students, remember the whole MDiv thesis that's being published independently, but the abstract also goes into the journal. So front matter, and this is more for the MDiv students. I don't need the front matter for if you're publishing. Of course, going to need your name and your title for it. So let's include at least the title page and the abstract. Acknowledgments, those are optional. Table of contents, even somewhat optional. Dedication, that's optional. And that front matter, let me just say, it probably won't appear in the journal publication because we have to compress things, and so you'll have the title, the author's name, and then the publication itself.